welcome, folks, to another edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider Holiday Edition. Because, look, next week, I'd like to think we could have the week off. I'd like to think we could do 1 week where we get away with not talking recruiting and the transfer portal, and people don't go crazy and say, what are you guys doing? You're asleep at the wheel. Why are you not doing your job? Right? Can we get a little time with the family? Maybe. You think that'll be all right with the folks there, Steve?
No, I don't, actually. If I'm being honest. Right?
Hopefully they'll come.
You have a family? Like, yeah. So.
I'm hoping they'll cut us some slack, right? Yeah, give us a little bit of leeway for the holiday next week. But listen, folks, we're gonna give you a lot to chew on in this episode, and hopefully that'll tide you over. And the crew that we're gonna have in Tampa, the TMI crew, gonna have you covered. I mean, unbelievably in Tampa, because we know what you want to hear anyway. We know you want to hear, what Bryce is doing. Not just Bryce, the entire early signee class, sans maybe. I think the only one that's not going to be with them practicing is Donovan Johnson. I think he's the only one. So, but, be tracking them in practice, the entire team, but the early enrollees and seeing how they're doing. We'll have all that coverage for you on the Michigan Insider. So even if you're missing the recruiting insider, we'll have you covered throughout the week on the MichiganInsider.com, right? But listen, the Recruiting Insider brought to you by our official sponsors, of course, starting with our friends at Wolverine. Now, you see this nice jacket that I'm wearing. Now, what is it called, this nice official piece of apparel from our friends at Wolverine? The men's Wolverine University of Michigan Overman hooded canvas shirt jack. This is an outstanding shirt. I actually wore this in one of the post-game videos. Really, really warm jacket. That's good, throughout the fall, early winter. So even as, it gets a little chilly here in the office, it serves as innerwear as well, and has that. Okay, I got to make sure that I'm showing you on the right side. Has a little Wolverine insignia on there as well. So the nice line of apparel through the partnership that Wolverine boots at Wolverine.com that they have with the University of Michigan and the Michigan Athletic Department and the NIL support that they've shown with Michigan student athletes. We told you about it all year. And the proud sponsors that they are of the Recruiting Insider, they are synonymous with blue collar and blue collar work ethic. That's what you should know about the Wolverine brand. Boots, gear, it's about the toughness and the blue collar work ethic that brand has come to show and represent throughout their existence. And now you see that also through their partnership with Michigan student athletes. You see this Overman shirt jack that I'm wearing right now. That's available at Wolverine.com. Again, Wolverine.com. You can get 15% off at Wolverine.com right now. So be sure to check that out. And then, of course, they have other great items over at Wolverine. You want to be sure that you check out all of the great options that are available, partnerships with the student athletes at the University of Michigan. We've been telling you about them all year long. You see Donovan Edwards, Colston Loveland, Mason Graham, Will Johnson, all of those guys. And women's student athletes, you see them, lacrosse, women's basketball, all of them across the sports spectrum at the University of Michigan. You see them partnering with Wolverine boots. All right, let's go ahead and get to talking some recruiting. Steve Lorenz, my man. Boy, it's been an event. Damon Payne, officially in the fold. It was not without some twists and turns So let's just first talk about his initial recruit. Let's talk about Michigan getting a much needed addition to their portal class, a 6'4", 315-pounder. This was a crucial addition considering what Michigan is losing from this roster to the NFL draft this
Yeah, I mean, depth. You're not going to replace Mason Graham. Kenneth Grant has not announced his intentions yet, but you gotta wonder, where he's leaning. And honestly, after reading Alejandro's thing today, it sounds like Rayshawn Benny feels like he has a decision to make too. So yeah, I mean, Michigan definitely. We know how important the interior of the defensive line is. I think it's one of the two or three most important positions on your football team. It can do so many things for you. Michigan needs depth up there. Again, I think it's going to be more of a their impact is going to be by depth next season, not necessarily by star power, right? So it's a situation where you're going to need one, probably two legit guys out of the portal to come in and give you some quality snaps. And yeah, Payne is what? This will be his fourth year? Is he a junior or senior? Like a fourth or fifth year guy? So, right?
Yeah. This will be his. He's been at he was at Bama for 5 years, so he'll be a 6th-year guy.
Okay, yeah. I mean, so you're talking about a veteran, on obviously one of the premier programs, with one of the premier programs in the country, right? But for me, he feels like a good depth piece for them. A guy obviously familiar with Michigan, what they have to offer, closer to home. So, kind of feel like that can always be a thing that can help. Maybe being a little bit more comfortable closer to home. So, yeah, I mean, I after the commitment, I did see a couple mentions of the old like Devontae Dobbs, Julian Barnett. Kind of like those old recruitments where like in-state recruitments where it's like they now he's on the roster. It's kind of weird. Things kind of come full circle. So, yeah, we have him ranked as a high 3-star 89 in the portal, top 100 portal type player. So, yeah, again, it'll be fascinating to see what Michigan looks like up front next season. I mean, they're going to probably do whatever they can to hang on to Benny for sure. And then cross your fingers for Kenneth Grant. But I just, it's hard to imagine.
I think given what they're losing, I think it just comes down to the dollars and cents of it. Yep. When it comes to Rayshawn, I think it'll work out. This is my opinion. It's retention versus acquisition. And when you see what it costs to get guys in the portal versus retaining your own guys and projecting, like stat wise, what he's done versus what you think he's going to do, like, yeah, what you pay for what his stats are now, it might not make sense, right? But you're paying for what you think he's going to do. Now, consider what you're going to pay for that same guy in the portal. It's like he's going to pay more in the portal. Yep. So you might as well pay your own guy, and it's going to make more sense. So it's Rayshawn Benny. You gotta pay that man his money.
Right. Yeah.
Facilitating KGB
Rounders,
line, right?
Yeah. That's a good movie, by the way. But yeah, and like that's kind of the other thing is like it little unfair almost that like retaining guys is a win in the portal.
Yeah.
Right? Getting TJ Guy back, getting Derek Moore back, those are wins because if either of those guys leave or both, you're probably having to go to the portal and take two guys that might not be familiar with the system, might not be as good as either of those guys, right? So like winning battles on your own roster is still kind of a piece of the whole portal situation that kind of goes a little overlooked, because again, I mean, these kids are in a position to leave. Doesn't even have to go to the NFL necessarily, right? I mean, you could just go in the portal and try to get a big, an absurd payday by different programs, I
tell you what, I think this is just my novice eye. I think Rayshawn Benny is better than anybody that was in the portal.
100%. I totally agree, Sam. Think about all, he's made probably 3 or 4 of the biggest plays for Michigan in the last like 3 or 4 years. You think about the pressure on Stroud that forced that late interception in 22 when Ohio State was trying to drive back. Forced the fumble on Drew Aller last year at Penn State when that was a close game and Penn State was driving. He forced the pressure on 4th down on Will Howard this year. The last play, the last offensive play of the game for Ohio State, it was Rayshon Benny that was right in his face. I mean, he's a guy that has kind of always kind of been in the shadows of Grant and Graham, but when he's healthy and getting snaps, he's always been incredibly effective. Like, I would be excited to see him as the headliner for a Michigan defensive line for 1 year, because he's got one thing that neither of those guys, his arms are so long for a guy on the interior that, I mean, I think he could be a real pass rushing force on the inside for them. And it'd be cool to see him kind of be that number one guy for a year for Michigan. So.
Yeah, and it makes sense for him to stay versus going someplace else to start over, learn a new scheme, be around guys you don't know. I mean, so it makes sense for him if he can get what he wants, if it makes financial sense for him versus jumping in the portal and doing it someplace else. So, I think it'll work out in the grand scheme of things. So, I think that's what it's all about. When all is said and done, why didn't he announce today that he's coming back? I think it's just dotting I's and crossing T's as far as the negotiations are concerned.
I was going to say it's positioning. I mean, right? Yeah. I mean, it's they're not dumb. I mean, they're not gonna, I would not be playing my hand if I was in his position right now, like at all. There's no incentive for him to do so. So
yeah, because I mean, there's no KG or Mason. I mean, like, he's the guy in the bowl game.
Yep.
On a defensive line. Imagine he goes in that bowl game and balls out.
Yep. Think
about that.
I do think.
I guess the portal window is closed by that point, but still.
Right.
Still,
I think his ceiling. He has not reached his ceiling yet. I think that's what's exciting leading into next year. Provided Michigan gets it all wrapped up and stuff. I think it'll be really interesting to see what he's capable of with a starter's amount of snaps.
Yeah, I agree with you. But. So Damon Payne, his value is higher now that we know, as of shooting this episode, Keyshawn Silver is off the board. He's committed to USC, who I think, if we are sort of handicapping how does the pendulum swing to USC, I think this becomes a matter of USC surging, because I think suddenly they have a lot more money to play with, because all their guys jump in the portal, except for Kamari Ramsey. So I bet you Kamari Ramsey, people are surprised Kamari Ramsey's coming back. I bet you Kamari Ramsey's coming back because suddenly USC has a lot more money to play with.
Yeah.
And they can pay him to come back now.
Yeah.
They can make more sense for him to come back because everybody else has left USC.
Kind of funny that you can stink. Stinking gives you more money to make a bigger impact in the portal because your guys on your roster don't want to play for you anymore. So now you have more money freed up to still make a splash. It's fascinating. So
yeah. So now you could just throw gargantuan sums and overpay guys to a point where you can win some of these battles. Maybe not pay Zachariah Branch money, who we'll talk about later. But maybe you could pay Keyshawn Silver money that no one else was coming close to. Now, do I know that for sure? I don't know. I'm speculating on that. So they lose Keyshawn Silver, and it makes getting Damon Payne that much more important. So how does it all unfold, right? This becomes drama that no one else expects, that no one here expects. This is how it played out. So he hits the portal, and I say instantly, Michigan's going to be a factor here. I got a tip from a guy that I've known forever, his trainer, Daryl Graham, who I've known DG. Not this is another DG. You might, when I say DG, you think Devin Gardner. He's DG as well. So we'll call that DG1. Because he's the DG you guys know, we'll call Daryl Graham DG2. So DG2 is Damon Payne's trainer. And DG2 is like, hey, Michigan is super aggressive. They're all over them. And they're coming hard. And they're trying to make it so he gets it done and over with. Right? Now, is it going to be effective in doing so and making him not take any other visits? Remain to be seen. As it stood, he was going to maybe take some visits initially, but Michigan was going to try to make a play for him not to. Well, it was effective because he wasn't going to take visits. And as it stood Wednesday night, he had done a commitment interview with Alan True. Commitment was done. He had committed to he was going to Michigan. He was going to announce it Thursday morning. All right. And so Alan had the commitment in you're reading all of these stories elsewhere about how it all played out. This is the part of the story that none of the rest of them have or know. So he had already made the decision. Alan had the commitment story done. He had interviewed the kid and his dad and all of that. They were going to give Alan the green light to release the story at some point Thursday morning, right? So, as DG tells it, he and his, I think it's he and his dad, or maybe it's he and his dad. I think it was him and his dad talking to Michigan that morning. And, they talk about, how it's going to go, and he's gonna, he's committed, and there's some forms to sign, or a form to sign, and he signs it. Now, the form that he signs is the agreement. I guess it's the financial agreement. It's the official agreement that says he's committed to Michigan. Right now, apparently, he believes that it's the application to school, to graduate school or MBA, the MBA program, or something other than the form that says he's committed to Michigan. All right. So at any rate, the long and the short of it was, as I was sitting during the morning show, my co-host Ira Weintraub says to me, there's a tweet that says Damon Payne is committed to Michigan. And it wasn't Alan True's story. So what happened? Well, the tweet that he read to me was Matt Zenitz's tweet. And Matt Zenitz's tweet said that Damon Payne is expected to transfer to Michigan. Now, these words are very important. Said he's expected to transfer to Michigan. Now, this was not the first report out there on Damon Payne. The first report out there on Damon Payne was from On Three's Pete. Is it Nakos or Nakos, Steve? I want to say his name right. Okay, so Pete Nakos.
Pete, On Three Pete.
On Three Pete. So he reported, 5 minutes or so, 10 minutes. He reported earlier that morning, Damon Payne has signed with Michigan. That was the report. Damon Payne has signed with Michigan. And that set off a chain reaction. How does he get this story that Damon Payne is signed with Michigan? Right? Well, the way he got it was when Damon Payne signed that form, it's official. He becomes registered in the portal as signed. And obviously, Pete Nakos has access to the portal. Now, media is not supposed to have access to it. This is something that college programs, coaches are supposed to have access to exclusively, and media is not supposed to have access to. But he had access to and posted that Damon Payne has signed. Now, this is not some grand miscarriage of justice. Media members across the country have sources that have allowed them access to the portal across the board. Now, how you use that access is at your discretion. Clearly, there's no pretense with Pete Nick. He just said, "Hey, I got access to the portal. This dude is signed with Michigan." Now, we will come back around to how you use such access. We just have a policy difference with how we use it here. Now, the cascading effect with how that affects Damon Payne and how that affects Michigan was, now it puts Zenitz in the position of he has to react. The story is out that he signed with Michigan. He's not going to report that the kid is signed with Michigan. He's not going to say that. But obviously you have to react in some way, even though Allen has a story that where he's interviewed the kid. You got to say something because there's a story out that says he signed. So he says, look, the kid is expected to transfer. Not going to say he's signed, even though you know that to be true because Allen has a story. But best you can do to bridge the gap is to say he's expected to transfer. All right. Now, Allen, his reaction is, I got to call the kid. I'm going to call the kid and see how he wants me to react. The kid is like, Michigan leaked it on me, but I don't want you to print the story. I wanted to release this on my own time. And oh, by the way, I didn't know that I was signing basically a commitment form. I thought this was like an application. All right, so there was some misunderstanding about what he was signing. Okay, so obviously this is forget whether there's your opinion of why there was a misunderstanding is inconsequential here. Let's set that aside. There was a misunderstanding is the point. A misunderstanding he was upset about. The first thing he was upset about is that his belief that Michigan leaked this to On3. And then the second part was, hey, was I misled here? How does this happen? Who's leaking this? Is Michigan? Is my family? Who's leaking this? So credit to Michigan. Credit to Lou Esposito, to Ron Bellamy, to Sharon Moore. There was no panic in this. Very calmly reacted to a very emotional time for the young man. It's like, look, first of all, we didn't leak this. First of all, why would we? We're sitting here and the discussion was, who's going to release it? Do you want us to release it or do you want to release it? And we told you go ahead and release it. We don't do that. Go for it. So why would we tell somebody to, right? So no, we didn't do that. Clearly they have access to the portal. And they decided when they saw it in the portal that they were just going to report it and not check with anyone. So that's on them. All right. Next part. This whole misunderstanding what you were signing. Well, if there's a misunderstanding, okay, we don't understand. Clearly, both sides have differing views about why there's a misunderstanding. Here's a clear solution. How about we just take the signing back? And then you can proceed to handle this on your own time, at your own pace. So you can act as if you never signed and do it all over again or not do it all over again, right? That's a simple way to handle it. So now if you don't want to sign, if there's some issue moving forward, you can do something totally different. Or if you do want to sign, you can. Right. And so, he had some time to ponder whether he was misled or whether it truly was a misunderstanding, right? Because now you can think, because I think he had to seriously consider, hey, did they mislead me, or was this truly a misunderstanding? And that's what he took some time to think about over the course of the day. And I know Darryl Graham personally, his running back. I don't know the other people. I don't know the lawyer agent involved. I can't speak for him. I don't know him. I know Darryl Graham. And I saw people kind of going at him on Twitter, saying that he was doing things for selfish purposes and, pushing the kid to do this and saying things for his own self. All of that is so off base. That is not DG2 number 2 at all. So I am just telling you, knowing him personally, vouching for him personally, the way that people were going at him was totally off base. He was not pushing Damon Payne to do anything at all. And the part about him saying that he was going to take visits and ponder his options, anything that he said to that effect were the things that Damon wanted him to say at those times. So, again, that's not how he operates. Not a hanger-on, not a leech, not any of those things. So, I know it's easy to kind of lump all trainers and representatives in one group. Not DG at all. So, what he said to me shortly after all of this was happened, and then the rescission, the rescinding of the commitment or the signing, he said, listen, he just needs some time to think about whether it was a misunderstanding or he was misled. And once he calms down, he said, I think he'll realize it was just a misunderstanding. I think he's going to sign with Michigan. That's what he said in the morning, and that's exactly what happened. So that's why you didn't see me sort of reacting. You saw all these people kind of giving this blow by blow and all of this panic reaction and this, people sort of explaining, and this is what's going on. People who didn't really know the parties involved, right? Kind of giving you this sort of this narration of events without any real perspective on it. So they can narrate for you without any real perspective, which I guess that you have to do it. But how informative is that? I don't think it's very informative at all. What we told the people on the board was if you were with us on the MichiganInsider.com, was listen, relax, let it play out. It is going to be okay. If you followed us on the board, that is what we told our subscribers. And that is exactly how it played out. Took some time, realized it truly was a misunderstanding, came back around, talked to the coaches who did not panic, did not say, hey, what's going on? Didn't criticize, didn't attack, didn't say, hey, man, what's your problem? Didn't do any of that. Just say, hey, listen, take whatever time you need. We didn't mislead you. We didn't leak anything. Do what you need to do to figure things out, and we'll be here when you want to talk again. And if you want to come back, we're right here. And he came back around. As for how this was handled on the On3 side of things, listen, they have had to clean up their share of On3 messes this recruiting cycle, Steve. This is not the same as the Bryce Underwood mess or the Jordan Young mess, which were those were catastrophes. Those were when you talk about conduct detrimental, those are just beyond reckless behavior. The kind of me type clout chasing behavior that gets you blackballed from the program, which is exactly what happened. which is exactly what happened. And so, people think it's gratuitous when I call it out, and it's not. I mentioned it. If it was gratuitous, Sharon would not have blackballed E.J. Holland from he wouldn't have blackballed him, which is exactly what he did. He issued an edict to his staff that said, hey, listen, this is not a guy that you as my staff should be communicating with, period. Made it very simple and plain. This dude is a harm and a detriment to this program. These are not the only two instances where he has been an issue. These are just the latest two incidents and the most serious. I mean, Bryce being the most serious, but these are the latest two incidents. And it's enough. It's enough. Now, this one with Damon is not that. This is not that, Steve. So this is more of a policy sort of deal. This is not like, someone just being, an ass, right? This is just how they operate, which is just different. Like, they have access to the portal. And let's say for the sake of argument that our guys have access to the portal. Let's just say for the sake of argument. The way that it would be handled over here is, okay, I got access. I see that a guy is signed in the portal. I might call my source at Michigan and say, hey, is so-and-so signed? Or I heard so-and-so is signed. Is that true? You use it as a tip. Or you call the kid and say, hey, I heard you signed with Michigan. Is that true? You use it as a tip to see if it is going to affect things or is it good to go with. And as a courtesy, so it's like a two-way street to either not expose your access, or if you're not concerned with exposing your access, to not necessarily blow up the spot of the school or the kid. So it's either to self-preservation or to preserve your sources. That's not a concern of theirs, which is fine. I mean, that's just not how they do things over there, Steve, which is a difference of policy, which is how they do things over there, which is different from how we do things over here. So difference of opinion and position, and you can choose how you want to support or who you want to support and how you get down, or how you want to support who you want to support and how they get down, Steve. I think people can discern for themselves what best supports Michigan.
I think like right now, probably more comfortable in how we do things and operate than maybe ever. Right? I mean, the site's been killing it. More new members than we can count. I feel like the such a great foundation on the message board. It's just, yeah, I mean, a difference in philosophy, a difference in policy, whatever you want to call it. I just, like I said, I think it's important to note, at least from my standpoint, how we do things as a team. I just don't think I've ever been more comfortable in just how we operate than it is right now, because it continues to pay off for, most importantly, our subscribers, right? I mean, and for us, it just, kind of really reinforces the way we've always done things. It just does kind of feel like now it's starting to be noticed on even a little bit higher level than before. You talk about the Underwood recruitment, you talk about portal now. It's just, it's a different level. And like I said, I think most importantly, I think the subscribers realize it, and it's really helping strengthen the foundation of the site on a day-to-day basis. So
yeah, I think first I like to put it this way, man. Do no harm. That's our first deal is, hey man, if it's gonna hurt Michigan, we're just not gonna do it. We're just not gonna do it.
Yeah, there's no
I'm
incentive.
talking about not that we won't report something. It's there's a difference. Like if there is a recruitment, like if there's something like an error or something, if there is a negative report, that's different. That's not what I'm talking about. Like for instance, we were talking about in the Indiana game where there was we were talking about the poor coaching in the red zone. That's not what we're talking about. What I'm talking about is if there is uh, a story that I have that the timing of that story for me is just for my benefit. It's just for my benefit. It's just something that helps me. Now it's just about my shine versus Michigan getting hurt and I just not get to shine. I just wait. That's the measure. If it's gonna hurt them versus helping me, I'll just not hurt them. It's kind of the measure that I kind of apply to it. So
It's never worth it, ever. Going playing the me first game. At the end of the day, it's never worth it. It just isn't. I mean, it's some people never learn. Others figure it out eventually, but yeah, it has never ever been worth it or will be worth it. So
yeah. In this particular instance, people will say, "Well, how would it have affected things?" And we'll move on. Just imagine if it wasn't reported that he signed. It's not like it wasn't an issue. The misunderstanding. It still would have been, "Hey, what did I sign?" It just never would have been public. Never would have been public that he is. It would have been, "Hey, wait a minute. What was this I signed?" And it would have been clear that he signed something different than what he thought he'd signed before it was ever public that he had committed to Michigan, right? And that would have been settled behind the scenes before it ever saw the light of day that he was committed to Michigan. He would have been clear. My application isn't filled out yet. That's the difference. And it would have been clear that, oh, wait, oh, there's a misunderstanding. Not that I was misled and you just wanted to get it out there because that's what he was thinking. Oh, you just wanted to get it out there to kind of make it, maybe force me to corner me into get my dad in. None of that's going on. He realized none of that was going on after the fact, right? So neither here nor there. Way too much time kind of mirroring the drama of the day, right? This is why I'm taking all day in the grand scheme of things. So let's move on, Steve.
I do know that it definitely made Allen's day. Yes, I know Allen had a great.
Didn't he call it the longest recruitment of his tenure?
Is something, yeah. I talked to him a little bit last night. Yeah, he said, "I'm just glad we get Paramount Plus."
Right. Well, listen, man, that recruitment, Steve, it wound up being more crucial than maybe we realized at the time. Because I tell you what, last night I was under the impression, and I think Michigan was under the impression too that they led for Keyshawn Silver.
Yep.
And lo and behold,
thought the same thing coming out. Right, but yeah, then you like you mentioned though, you got USC who has fallen into some extra finances because none of their current players want to play on the team anymore. So, and this just to speak in general, but I'm sure this Silver recruitment applies. I mean, this market it's insanity. I mean, it's crazy. I'm sure that USC probably just ended up throwing more at him than he even thought he was going to get entering the portal, and that's probably what ended up dictating the decision at the end of the day, right? So, not sure USC would be a team I'd be latching onto necessarily. I mean, I do think Lynn is a good defensive coordinator, but yeah, it's just money talks. I mean, if there's anything you've learned so far in the portal, it's really what it comes down to in most instances.
All right, so we need to talk about where they pivot to on the defensive line, because clearly they were looking to add a couple. This was never an either-or proposition with Damon and Keyshawn Silver. They were trying to get them both. And so now with Keyshawn off the board, where do they turn? Another guy who was a very familiar name on the board was a guy that they were looking at last year, and that was JVR Suggs, a young man who spurned them last year and wound up going to LSU.
Suggs was Grand Valley originally, correct?
Correct.
I wonder if the familiar, like Brian Kelly's familiarity with that program is maybe what pushed him down. Maybe some people were pumping Brian Kelly to him. A lot of the Tennessee, I think Wisconsin, Michigan, obviously there's a few others involved. Another name, Sam, that actually has popped up just since you and I started recording. Our Chris Hummer is reporting that Michigan is among those interested in new Washington State transfer David Gusta. Michigan, Alabama, and Oklahoma are three schools mentioned. By the looks of the article that Chris wrote, it sounds like he's going to have a pretty high, solid ranking. So that's another name to maybe look at. And again, yeah, like you said, I mean, it's not going to be just one guy. I almost want, depending on how you can maneuver it, and depending on how you feel your roster is going to look. And if you can find a guy with a little bit of flexibility, you could talk three. I mean, if you had the right guy, I mean, again, who knows with the finances involved and how they just decide to delegate it. But, a guy like Suggs or Gusta, and I think you had another name that we wanted to talk about as well, is there are options now. I mean, Lou has been doing a great job of keeping doors open. I mean, honestly, Silver going to USC as being a surprise, I mean, basically means that Michigan probably barely missed on their number one target. They are able to recoup Payne, who's a top 100 guy in the portal for us, which is a good thing, by the way. Like, there are 1,700 kids that have entered the portal since December 1st. Top 100, I mean, we have a full 247, I believe, at this point. Or close to it. And so you do that, and then you're still in with two or three guys that I think are ranked pretty highly themselves. So,
yeah, another guy. That's they're going to be expanding the board, but another guy that I expect them to push to get in with, it's a guy from Louisville named Jared Dawson. So Jared Dawson, 6'2", 305 pounds, played 37 games over 4 years at Louisville, entered the portal Saturday, started a couple games last season, 19 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, like I said, in 10 games last year, a couple of starts. And, he's a guy who, I mean, just stat-wise, I mean, it's pretty good stats. I mean, his stats actually put up better stats than Damon Payne, for that matter. So this is the guy that I expect to see Michigan really push to get in the mix for some good size. And you're trying to build that rotation. If you assume that you get Rayshon Benny back, Damon Payne, Trey Pierce, you want that one more piece, that one more 305, 310-pound piece, and then you throw Ike Awana in there. You got that nice 4-5-man rotation of 305 to 315 pound, 320 pound, mix in there, and they're all experienced now, Steve. And you can't replace the best interior line tandem of all time for Michigan. Maybe in Big Ten history. But boy, if you can just have, 5 just burly, physical guys that you can count on to be, space fillers in there, and you got one guy that can be a real playmaker in there, Rayshon Benny, you can win with that. You can win with that, and especially if you got some playmakers on the outside, like you got Jayshon Barham and TJ Guy, Cam Brandt, who you saw have flash and playmaking skills. You can win with that.
Yeah, Derek Moore too, right?
Derek Moore.
So it's Michigan's always had the benefit. I feel like, even going back to the Don Brown days, like a couple of those teams had both really good interior and edge players. I think last year's the national championship team obviously had elite players, but they've always been so good at either edge or on the interior that it helps that other unit because you can only focus so much attention on. There's only enough players to focus attention on so many guys. I think Michigan at edge next season will be able to help offset a little bit the loss of a Mason Graham type who, the bigger question, like, not to go totally off topic, but I think the bigger question with Graham is, like, where does he rank in, like, Big Ten history as a defensive he's got to be in that. I'd probably say Ndamukong Suh's probably, I don't remember, was Nebraska even in the Big Ten then?
They weren't in the
No, they weren't, right? But, where does he stand historically and as far as the conference is concerned? But, so yeah, you're not going to replace that. So yeah, it really is about finding enough quality players that you feel comfortable rotating in to keep all of them relatively fresh throughout a 4-quarter game. That's kind of been one of the drivers of Michigan's success the past 4 or 5 years anyway is a little bit of a heavier rotation up front. A lot, and that goes without saying, guys who are already on the, like an Enow Etta or a Trey Pierce too. Like, if you get one of those guys to really step up and turn into a player, which, as a matter of fact, I think Alejandro today talked to some
Enow Etta, man. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, he was the highest ranked player in that 2023 class, which is, talk about the portal has already been totally decimated. That class is like hanging on by a thread at this point. There's been so many guys have left, but Etta is one. Alejandro talked to, I believe it might have been TJ Guy, who mentioned Enow Etta as somebody that they think can step up and play well in the bowl game. But long story short, you want to find a 4 or 5 man rotation, to keep your big guy like Benny next year fresh. It will be effectiveness by depth next year and not having one of the best interior defenders in recent history in Mason Graham and a absolute freak of nature in Kenneth Grant. So,
all right, folks. So Passes and Passes.com, our proud sponsor, is an official NIL partner of Michigan Athletics, and they have made it possible for Michigan student athletes to leverage their likenesses in ways that they weren't able to before. A platform. They can platform themselves. They can take their content and their content creation and use the Passes platform to engage you directly. And so now they can put their content that they create on the Passes platform. You can go there and you can view it. They can put their merch on the Passes platform, and you can access it and purchase it in that way. It's your direct route, your direct access point to the Michigan student athlete in a way that you never had before. Engagement in a way, access in a way that you never had before through Passes. But you have to engage. You have to get your membership. You can do that at passes.com. This is your way to do your part NIL wise as well. So much of what happens with NIL comes from major donors and their support. This is your way as a general fan, as a regular fan, to support student athletes directly by subscribing to Passes. And when you do that, your proceeds, your fee, can go directly to the student athlete, right? So you, through your membership and that portion of your membership fee through your engagement with the student athlete. Your purchase of their merch directly can go to that student athlete. This is how you support the programs and the student athletes via NIL through Passes. So go to passes.com and support the team and support Michigan in that way. Home of Team 146. And of course, as we've been saying, built for those who stay. This is how you do it. This is how you support. So join now. This is unique. No other program in the country is doing it this way with Passes. None. And through you, you can help Michigan student athletes directly in ways that no other program is doing it. So sign up right now at passes.com. All right, so Steve, let's go ahead and switch gears and go over to offense. We spent a lot of time over on this week's episode of Dropping Dimes breaking down Dequan Finn, who visited Michigan earlier this week, the former Toledo quarterback, Baylor quarterback, and now in the transfer portal. Michigan brought him in for a visit this week. And now also looking hard at Brendon Lewis. And that's a Dropping Dimes special. He's on the Michigan radar because of Dropping Dimes, because of Devin Gardner. He's the one put him on the radar. And Al Borges. Al saw him live, too. They were at the Boise State, Nevada game. Al was out there because he was the former Boise State OC. He was being honored out there. And Devin was calling the game, and they both saw him live. And they were like, this is a guy. And they've been talking about him ever since. And Michigan took a look at him, and they liked him. They talked to him. He's interested, and they're talking about bringing him in on a visit. And so he is on the radar and a real dual threat option that 67% passer, nearly 800 yards rushing. I think a long of 67 yards, really intriguing guy. So two real intriguing options there that we talked a lot about. I encourage people to check out that part of the Dropping Dimes episode. It is indexed. You can really, really take a look at that. The guy we didn't talk about on that episode, Steve, that can kind of dive into a little bit here, Mikey Keene, who's coming in for a visit this weekend.
Yeah, so Keene, in watching him, I kind of feel like he's the kind of, like, Michigan probably would have won a couple more games with a quarterback like him this year, as a guy who is incredibly efficient in throwing short passes, getting the receiver the ball as quickly as possible. Probably not like a high ceiling type, right? I mean, I think it's interesting to kind of wonder what is. I mean, if you're Michigan, I mean, I'm not really thinking much about. I'm just trying to find the best player. I don't care about Bryce Underwood as in terms of like trying to improve my roster, right? Like you just want to get the best player possible. I do feel like Keene is I don't know if I maybe call him like a safe pursuit, right? I mean, I think we agree. I think Lewis is the guy I think I would prefer to see Michigan reel in. Keene being, like I said, a little bit more of a safe bet. I think Billy Edwards would have been a good fit for Michigan if they had been able to, if they'd have pulled that one out. But I think getting Lewis, I think I would be more, if I was a Michigan fan, I think I'd be more excited about Lewis than I would Edwards or really any guy they've been connected to at quarterback in the portal.
Yeah, so I would think this is how I would view it. And you tell me if you agree, Steve. If Mikey Keene came in and beat out Bryce, I would view it from the outside looking in as a temporary circumstance. Whereas if Brendon Lewis were to come in and win, or Dequan Finn, but especially Brendon Lewis, I think Bryce would have to really, if Bryce beat him, it'd be like, oh man, Oh boy. Oh boy.
And that's what you want, right? I mean, that's I think that's the scenario if you're Michigan that you're trying to create. I mean, yeah, he's going to be the guy eventually at some point. I mean, it's obvious. It's a it's a given. But yeah, push him as hard as you possibly can from the get go. Yeah, I mean, I don't think beating out a guy that we would all expect him to eventually beat out is something that Michigan looks at and says that's probably the best case scenario. I mean, you want to bring in somebody who's really going to make him have to work for it, right? And with a skill set like what Lewis has, always a possibility that they're guys who can kind of feed off of each other, and maybe Bryce could learn a few things from a more veteran quarterback who's played at the college level, has a similar style. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I think Keene, that is probably taken a little bit too negatively, but I just do think would be sort of a safe addition to the roster. Would be an improvement. No offense to Davis Warren, would be an improvement over what we saw this season, obviously, but at the same time, like you said, I think probably by early conference season, I would think that the calls for Underwood would be very, very loud, and not necessarily because Bryce has been showing out to an insane level as much as people might not still be thrilled with the week-to-week quarterback play. Because there's a lot of the schedule's so much easier than it is next year, but there are a few in that, like that 4th, 5th, 6th week of the season. I think there's SC, Wisconsin, Nebraska are all in that same. Those are games on paper you think Michigan should win, but those are games where the quarterback play this year, even if Michigan had the talent edge, they would have lost those games. You can't lose those types of games next season, given how your roster should look compared to those 3 programs, right? So, you want to just it's the same way that Michigan's always started. Whatever makes your team the best, 1 through 115 is how you want to go, So I think having a high ceiling guy like Lewis just changes the potential dynamic for Michigan next year.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, maybe it works better for Mikey Keene with better talent around him, assuming that Michigan continues to rack guys up along the offensive line, which I want to segue over into here really quickly. They pick up Brady Norton, which they wound up beating Ohio State for. That's a big pickup there. And now, I think they lead for Josh Thompson. The Josh Thompson, the transfer from Northwestern, came in on a visit. Michigan absolutely blew him away. From Fenton, Michigan. It was a matter. Initially I thought they would have to beat out the Big Ten footprint. So you got Michigan State, the other in-state Big Ten program, and you got Ohio State. And coming out of that visit, I think they beaten out the Big Ten footprint. I think that they're done. I think the Michigan State and Ohio State is my opinion. My opinion, Steve. I think they're done. I think they're out. I think Ohio State crushed. It's like, why would you want to go play offensive line at Ohio State after they got punked up and down the field by Michigan 3 years in a row, right? 4 years in a row, excuse me. 4 years in a row. Not going to do it. Michigan State, look how far away they are. I don't want to do that. So now it's like the South, which he visited for the first time, and they've done a really effective job down there. First at Auburn. I think Tennessee has done a really effective job. Now he's going to check out LSU. We have to see what kind of a factor LSU winds up being. But what I've seen develop, Steve, is, there are certain targets where it's like Michigan has sort of made it, because this is the way with Damon Payne. Like, this is a guy where we are absolutely going to battle for this guy. And Josh Thompson is one of those guys. So SEC, we're going to battle for this guy. Whatever you're going to do, we're here for it. We're here for this fight. Come with it. It's kind of the posture Michigan is taking with Josh Thompson.
Yeah, I mean, when he's a native of a town 45 minutes away and is a guy who can really, really help your team. I mean, this is the kind of guy that you do go all out for, right? And I agree. I think Auburn, Tennessee, definitely the two programs to watch for. Yeah, with the Ohio State thing, I don't think there's a more hated assistant coach in college football than Justin Fry at Ohio State right now. They missed on the number one tackle in the portal, Isaiah World, because Ohio State, he was quoted as saying that Ohio State talked to him about playing guard. It's just like the jokes kind of write themselves at this point.
What?
Like, yeah, Isaiah World is the guy's name. I can't remember if he's from Nevada or something.
Are you kidding? Hey, Isaiah World is from Nevada.
Yeah, he mentioned.
Do you know how big Isaiah World is?
6'8". Yeah, no, that's what.
He's 6'8".
Yeah, no. I was gonna say he'd make any Ohio State quarterback look like John Navarre next year. He'd hit him in the back of the helmet every time he drops back to throw it. He was quoted as saying something like Ohio State talked about tackle. They also talked about guard, but I want to play tackle. And I'm like, and like their fans, rightfully so. I mean, in their defense, are like, what in the hell is this guy doing? He is killing our offensive line recruiting. I'll be fascinated to see after the playoffs if he survives. I almost feel like it could make a change there. But either way, yeah, Josh Thompson, again, probably, I mean, it's got to be one of the top, 2 or 3 overall targets for Michigan in the portal. And as a guy that, yeah, would be a plug and play for them. Probably takes Preeb's spot from last year, I would think. Could be a swing guy. I do know that Norton, not the kid out of Cal Poly, I think it was Cal Poly. Yep. Not a guy I would necessarily count on to play next. That's almost like a recruiting win, kind of. A legit swing guy, could end up playing tackle or guard, but the exact phrase was immensely high upside. So not a guy I necessarily think you'd see on the field next season. Maybe sort of like Brett, like if you do, then that means he's like really, really good. I don't think the expectation is that he's a plug and play type, but not the type of portal edition you're used to where it's still, you know what I mean? Like it's not your portal. You always think immediate play, got to be a guy that's going to play right away. I don't think that's what Michigan was necessarily looking at here, which again, that's great. That's nice to just keep restocking that room. I mean, you've lost a few guys out of there so far. Not sure they're done losing guys yet. Still, possibly we'll see. But either way, Thompson and Norton, just by pursuit alone, feel like the guys that they've gone, hardest on, and they could very well end up with both of them.
Absolutely. Norton is, to me, like the Darius Henderson, John Runyon, guys of that size profile, 6'4", 290 with a frame where they could be 6'4", 310, 315, but with really long arms and great feet. So they can play tackle. They can, because they have those super long arms and can extend and keep guys off their body and great feet. They can play tackle at the college level, and Norton can do that. So he gives you some of that positional flexibility that can give you that kind of swing guy. He's young enough to you can kind of see how he grows, and you can kind of recruit around him with that in mind. Like based on who else you get, you can also move him around as well. So that's some great flexibility to have. So Steve, immediately when this guy's name hit the wire, I knew it was gonna be like a bomb in a good way, or firework. Maybe we should say bomb. Fireworks are gonna hit the site as soon as the name Zachariah Branch hit. It's like, oh my God. And because he had Michigan on his list, it was going to be like, this is the one. This is the one. This is like, of all the portal names, can Michigan call up Jolin Ellison and say, show me the money and show it all to Zachariah Branch, because essentially that's pretty much what it sounds like it would take, Steve, in order to get that guy. And that, at least if you believe what some of the reports are saying.
I mean, I'm sure the reports are at least slightly exaggerated, but they're also not. It's like I said. I mean, I just feel like this portal market is going to correct itself someday, whether it's next year, 2 years from now. I mean, some of these numbers you're talking about guys making like average NFL at their position salaries for. Branch has been a good player, but he hasn't been like a superstar or anything at this point. I think he's capable of it. He kind of reminds me, you remember Tyjon Lindsey?
I do.
Same class as Tate Martell, played at Bishop Gorman. I kind of feel like he is what people thought Lindsey was going to be back in the day. You know, a dynamic playmaker. Had a pretty good game against Michigan, if I remember correctly. But a guy that, he is one of those get the ball in his hands and kind of let him do his thing. But yeah, I mean, between the reported numbers, which was what, Sam? Was it $4
million?
I mean, you got to be freaking
$4 million for a year, Steve.
That again, that's more than. I mean, look at what Tim Patrick's doing in Detroit. He's not making $4 million for the Lions right now. Like, are you kidding me? Type deal. Like, what the heck is going on? But Georgia, other schools are obviously involved. You know, yeah, I agree. It was natural that his name was gonna pop up, just because of the, I mean, people foaming at the mouth to get something at receiver. You know, but ironically, it's funny. You see Michigan beat Ohio State 4 straight seasons. What they always put out at wide receiver, but I would argue, just based on maybe like besides like quarterback, it feels like the market at receiver is like one of the most expensive that there is. Even though I would argue, like, why? Like, I don't know. It's crazy. I mean, some of these numbers are just outrageous. If I'm being honest.
Yeah, Zachariah Branch he's an unbelievable talent. To the point where it was startling that such a supposed offensive genius like Lincoln Riley didn't seem to feature him. You would think he would get the ball in that guy's hands 10 times a game. Like, how did we not see him, get touches all over the place? He'd be getting jet sweeps. I'd be throwing them screens. He'd be getting, I'd make sure that guy touched the ball any number of ways. I'd wildcat him. I'd just make sure and there just was none of that. I mean, did you remember him being much of a factor in the Michigan game? I was deathly afraid of him going into that game. And he
plays. He had a couple, but as far as usage goes, you're right. I mean, it was like you kind of wonder, and that's why they've lost like literally every receiver on their roster this offseason. Right. It's crazy, but
right. But he's the kind of guy that even without those numbers, he's so electric that, the talk of $4 million, as outlandish as it sounds, it's not like he's going to get laughed out of the room if his agent goes in there and says $4 million. Somebody's going to listen to that. If that number is real, somebody's going to listen to it. Now, do I think $4 million is a realistic number for Michigan? I don't. Now, I don't know if $4 million is actually a real number. I just look, because there were fake numbers being reported with Bryce. So this could be a fake number. I don't know that. I'm just telling you, to being realistic and just looking at, people think that you can just throw money at it. Just throw money at it. Listen, there's not a bottomless pit of money that they have. There's just not. I mean, maybe you have a line into the collective, and the collective has told you that they spend whatever you want. But I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that's the case, that they could just spend whatever they want and they have all the money that they need at their disposal to just spend indiscriminately. That's not the case. If his number is $4 million, I think that puts Michigan out of that race. That because not only does that blow up your budget, but it also distorts your scale, your slots for other guys. I mean, just what they think Bryce got, and he's a quarterback. He's a quarterback because right now you're telling guys, you're having to explain to players, listen, quarterbacks get this. You're not a quarterback. Receivers don't get quarterback money. Now you're going to pay a quarterback more than, imagine paying a receiver more than you pay a quarterback. Oh my God. Now you're completely blowing up the map. That's going to, whatever team does that is going to warp their entire roster.
Yep. That's the downfall of any number being made public, whether it's true or not. Other players are reading these articles. Their agents are reading these articles. You're definitely, like I said, even if that number's false, wherever he ends up going, no doubt, yeah, that coaching staff's going to have some questions to answer from current players on the roster, other portal targets, probably recruits. Like it's one of those things that it's just never. It's definitely not in the program. It's not in the program's interest to be attached to those numbers, right? I mean, if you end up signing the guy, it's not going to do any good for you. So whether they're true or not, right? It's about the perception and what people will believe, or will even use a perceived number to create leverage in their own situation. So
Now, Michigan's going to kick the tires, make a mistake, because his number might not be 4 million.
Right.
Now, if his number's not 4 million, now you can talk. Now, if it's 7 figures, but short of 4 million, now there's some wiggle room. Now you can negotiate, because you also got to take into account his brother Zion Branch, safety. You got to factor him into the equation too, and how much he's going to cost, and figure that into the mix as well. And so tires are being kicked, and you see where that goes. They are farther down the line, and I've already done some reporting on this with Duce Robinson, another 5-star guy from USC in the portal, and there has been contact. There have been conversations. They're talking visit, conversations with Sharon, with Ron Bellamy. That's promising. No visit yet, but there's talk of one, and we'll see where it goes, Steve. But a big, huge target has been productive. You talk about a guy, quarterbacks love big targets. He's 6'6", 225 out there,
yep,
and can run at that size. That's the guy you love to see out there.
Kind of like was it Johnny Wilson at Florida State? I think he's playing for he's on the Eagles or something now. It's like a 6'6", 6'7", guy. Like literally the complete opposite of Branch, like on the same roster. But yeah, I mean, I believe he was I think he was rated and ranked as a tight end.
He was
in high school, right?
Number one.
Yeah, kind of wonder if he maybe should have done the Mark Andrews and maybe embraced playing tight end. Place a little bit of inline and really could do the same things he's doing, but do it as a tight end. Maybe get drafted a little bit earlier. But yeah, no, a guy that would answer the question of does Michigan trying to get bigger at receiver? Yeah, this would qualify as them trying to get bigger at the receiver position. So I think he'd be a great fit, and would really could be the type of guy that could kind of change the dynamic for Michigan. You already got Donovan McCulley. If you were able to add a Duce Robinson type, you got an Andrew Marsh who could probably come in and play right away. All of a sudden, receiver doesn't look as weak, as much of a weak point as it did on this year's roster. So would again add a completely different dynamic than what Michigan's been used to at the position. But yeah, what was it? Arizona State, I think Florida State too. I think his dad played at Florida State, was something I'd read.
He did.
Yeah. Even with that, I still don't know how you'd want to attach to that coaching staff and stuff. But I'm just speaking. I mean, didn't Norvell contribute like his own money to the fund, which is basically the "please don't fire me" fund? I think Brian Kelly did the same thing. Like, these coaches are starting to put their own money into the fund, and it's like, it is totally like, it is coaches who are kind of on the hot seat are the only ones that are doing that. And so yeah, I mean, but with the family connection, they probably will be a factor. But yeah, again, another spot where Michigan needs another guy, and will probably, we talked about going all in on a Josh Thompson. Kind of feel like this would be the type of guy that would be the right person to go all in at receiver with.
Yeah. Got to get him on campus. On campus. I agree with you on Florida State. Man, I mean, yes, his dad's alma mater, but boy, they were a train wreck. And you feel like the only thing that saved Mike Norvell, was that they were jobbed. I don't know.
Last
Maybe
year?
they weren't jobbed.
I
guess I don't feel like they were jobbed because they were jobbed by the circumstance of their quarterback getting hurt. I felt like they were not a playoff team without their quarterback. No. So the circumstance jobbed them.
Michigan would have wrecked Florida State.
Yeah, they would have walloped them. So that's what saved them, though, because that team is terrible.
It's like when they lost to Georgia Tech, it was like, man, these guys stink. Then they lost to Memphis. It was like, these guys really stink. Then it was like they lost to, and they only won one game?
One game.
That is insane after going not undefeated. Georgia smoked them in the bowl, but to go 13-0, barely missing the playoffs to 1. And yeah, that's why he's donating $4 million of his own money into the fund. Please keep me. Please give me another chance.
Yeah. So do you want to get on that potentially sinking ship if you're Duce Robinson? So
they've added a few decent guys out of the portal, but it's like these are the kind of teams, in a way, though, if you're Michigan, you almost don't want to be recruiting against, because they're probably, you talk about just throwing money.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing whatever, those types of schools are doing whatever they absolutely can to rebuild as fast as possible and give them a roster that the staff can keep their jobs and that the fans will be happy with, right? I mean, it's like, so those are the kind of schools probably aren't worried about fit, culture. Right. They're just trying to add as much talent as possible. So, right. So interesting.
Yeah. All right. So Steve, sticking on the receiver side of things, but at tight end, number one tight end in the portal, Max Klare from Purdue made his way to Michigan's campus on a visit. This is one of those guys who kind of moves. It's kind of like a clandestine mission. He kind of moves in silence, so to speak. Doesn't really talk about his recruitment. Keeps his movements close to the vest. But it's like Texas A&M. He made his way to Michigan on a visit. Dropped by Louisville as well, and Louisville has some real buzz here because Brom, he was actually the coach that recruited Klare to Purdue before he took the job at Louisville. So, they feel like a real team to watch there. But this is, if you're Michigan, anytime you're recruiting a tight end, you feel like you're in good shape.
Like, yeah, I mean, I think as a tight end, you would be kind of like remiss to not consider Michigan if they're interested in you, right? He's a Cincinnati native. That's another thing I think with Louisville too that makes them a little bit dangerous. Is that's the proximity there is pretty good for him as well. But yeah, kind of a somewhat of a rarity. I think, well, maybe not. I mean, a lot of the guys in the portal don't really want to go through the whole media thing again and do all that stuff. But again, makes absolute sense that Michigan would pursue the number one tight end in the portal. Again, you're Michigan. You've produced how many guys at tight end? You're about to produce probably a first-round pick in Colston Loveland. Feel like they tried to make an early run at Luke Haas, the former with the Arkansas, who Michigan kind of tried to make a late run at during his original recruitment. He was part of Ole Miss's early portal run here, like last week. I feel like he committed there. So, yeah, definitely another spot where I'll be interested to see how far down the board they would go. Like if they really are that bent on adding a guy, or if they just feel like there's a couple options out there who they could maybe find another number one type option, like a Max Klare or a Luke Haas, type deal to go along with Marlon Klein and then the emerging Hogan Hansen, next season. So, yeah, kind of a recruitment, kind of hard to handicap where that one's going to go. Interesting that Texas and Texas A&M are the other two schools involved. But, yeah, I think, like you said, I didn't realize that Braum makes sense, though, was the guy who originally recruited him. And then he's got the proximity with Louisville. So,
that's right.
And they have a quarterback now, too, right? I mean, they got Miller Moss, so he's got a guy that can get him the ball, so it kind of makes sense that they're a factor.
Yeah. Again, you got your tight end resume if you're Michigan. That's your ace in the hole, and you hope that's enough to kind of offset proximity, familiarity, and like you said, they have their quarterback. Maybe Michigan can get another quarterback to go along with Bryce to maybe kind of offset that, and then you add your NIL and try to get in the bidding war. Ohio State has jumped in the mix too. They're trying to make things interesting. So that one seems like, it seems like there's some intrigue left. But right now, the vibe feels like Louisville might have the advantage. But like I said, it's just so hard to tell because he keeps things close to the vest. But we got some know someone in this in his orbit anyway that we are kind of trying to tap into to see if we can get some feelers. So keep it locked over on the MichiganInsider.com. We'll try to keep you plugged into some intel on Max Klare in the coming days. Another guy we're going to try to keep you plugged in on, and this is one that we feel like Michigan feels good about. And this was one that the moment he hit the portal, like kind of like with Damon Payne, you knew Michigan instantly was going to be a factor. And ironically, the same school, Alabama, Justice Haynes, Steve, as soon as he hit the portal, it's like, hey, this is one Michigan is going to be a factor with. And sure enough, it's like, hey, he's going to visit Michigan. He had Michigan on his list, and he's going to be in Ann Arbor this weekend.
And I feel like running back is quietly a spot where they actually kind of really need somebody. They need a proven guy, I think, to theoretically go alongside Jordan Marshall. I think we expect that Marshall would be the other guy, with Ben Hall also still in the mix. Micah Capana as well. But I as far as think about the just total lack of experience in the running back room now with Mullings departing, there's just not a lot of career carries in that room right now. Haynes, watching him and then looking at his stats, it's just another guy. Kind of wondered why Alabama maybe didn't use him a little bit more than they did. I know Alabama's always, and it doesn't seem like it's changed under DeBoer, Alabama's always loved to give the ball to as many guys as they possibly can. I mean, they're not the days of Derrick Henry are gone. They're not giving a guy 40 carries per game anymore. I mean, they do like to split it up, but either way, Haynes just looked really effective. kind of feels like he'd be a perfect fit for Michigan to kind of carry that torch over from Mullings. I know another guy that I think probably will depend on with Haynes, but Dante Dowdell out of from Nebraska entered the portal, and as a guy, our Nebraska guy told me that Nebraska thought Michigan was a school that was going to be very interested in him. He's a more of a big bruiser type back, and I think would definitely be more of your short yardage, not much of a cut guy. If anybody remembers, he's the guy that broke Shiloh Sanders' arm against Colorado this year by just not cutting. He just ran over him. So also would be kind of neat because he would be the second player in program history from Mississippi. It would not just be Jeremy LeSueur, who it's been forever. So, yeah, no, I mean, it's always my favorite Michigan football-related trivia question. Who's the only guy in program history, walk-on or scholarship, from the state of Mississippi? It's Jeremy LeSueur. So, yeah. But Justice Haynes, definitely the top guy. This weekend's visit, as any of these visits are, anytime a guy makes it up will be huge. But yeah, would really give Michigan experience and talent at a spot I think they quietly really kind of need somebody.
Yeah, Jay Lou, that's my man. Jay Lou watches the Recruiting Insider. Jay Lou is a plug. He helps Michigan in recruiting as well. Is a plug down in that Memphis, Mississippi, that area. He tries to help Michigan out. When he was Michigan's initial plug to Walter Nolan. But I don't know if folks knew that. But that was Jay Lou. He was the initial plug to the Nolans. So
I'm hoping they get somebody from Mississippi at some point, so he's got company. Right. I remember when they were kind of close on Willie Gay. It was like finally maybe they'll get somebody from Mississippi, but yeah, no, that's cool. That's good.
But Justice Haynes, I get it. In a situation there where first, obviously, they're going to run Jalen Milroe. So that was number one. But even moving forward, he's going to be second fiddle. I think he kind of realized that, you're in a situation there where you're behind Jam Miller. And so, I'm going to go someplace where I'm going to be the guy. And you see an opportunity to be that at Michigan, even though, you feel like here at Michigan, hey, Jordan Marshall you like Jordan Marshall, but if you're a guy like Justice Haynes, you're like, hey man, I got a chance to at least go there and compete to be the guy. You're coming here to look, and that's not to discount Ben Hall either, but you see an opening at least at a place like Michigan, and you have a great relationship with a guy that recruited you out of high school and Tony Alford. That's the reason why you felt really good about Michigan's chances, Tony Alford connection. And so huge visit for Michigan. A lot of smoke out there that the Wolverines are at or near the top of the list. And, a great bet. They're going to feature the run, even though they're looking to diversify their passing game. They are not going to abandon their identity. Smash is going to be a part of what they do. And so to have an experienced back, there's a great opportunity here for Justice Haynes. So, rounding out the discussion, Steve, are two major priorities on the defensive side. So let's start at corner. Because I want to leave linebacker for the grand finale. So let's start at corner. And we'll go to Arizona and talk about Emmanuel Karnley, cornerback, I think he's number 7 in the transfer portal rankings for 24/7 Sports. But, man, Arizona had some huge corners. Like, you had 6'3", 185, 190 on one side, and Emmanuel Karnley, and 6'4", 195, and Tacario Davis on the other side. I mean, these dudes were huge. Huge corners. Now, Emmanuel Karnley is an absolute priority for Michigan. Like the zeal with which they're recruiting him is such that he's number 7 on 24/7 Sports' list, but he may as well be number 1 on Michigan's list. They are recruiting him and have been recruiting him as hard as any corner that they've recruited. Cam Calhoun, who was formerly at Michigan, who's now committed to Alabama, he was rated higher. He was number 4 on 24/7 Sports' list. They were recruiting Karnley as hard as that. Like, this dude is a guy for them. He can play the boundary. He can play to the field. He's long, but he's twitchy. Like, he's a dude that's just scratching the surface, it seems. Ole Miss is in there. I know Ole Miss is high. Miami and Ole Miss, Steve. So think about that. So he's visited Ole Miss in Miami. And I think this is important. And he got through those visits. And he's still visiting Michigan this weekend. That is significant to me. Because these are 2 schools, and I wrote this, 2 schools that throw down the gauntlet, so to speak, in recruiting. So that says to me, A, that Michigan has made it clear, listen, we want you. And then B, that it's not just about you just back up just throw out all the bags. Just throw out all the bags at me, and that's it. And that's gonna be it. That's gonna be the end of the discussion. I mean, it's NIL, but it's gonna be more than NIL that I'm looking for before all is said and done for Emmanuel Karnley. These are 2 things that are very clear in his recruitment. If you get through Miami and Ole Miss to come to Michigan, that comes screaming through the fact that he's taking this visit this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes you feel like Michigan has a shot, right? Yeah, you're right. Like, those are schools that won't let you leave until you tell them no, I'm gonna keep visiting other schools, right? So, speaking of that, we're talking about USC freeing up money. Arizona is now up to 31 kids who have transferred out of their program this offseason. I just that's like a quarter of your roster just gone. With, you mentioned Takario Davis, another one, along with Karnley, both are very highly ranked in the portal. But yeah, 6'3". Yeah, I mean, yeah, both those guys. But Karnley specifically, yeah, like you said, Davis is a one I think is going to attract a ton of attention. I mean, he's the number 1 corner. He's going to attract a ton of attention from a lot of big names. They're actually the only 2 corners in the top 8 or 9 who have not committed to a program yet. Yeah, the top 9. So, yeah. But Michigan, again, like we said, this in the portal, getting a guy to campus is even more important than it is during a regular recruitment. You have no shot if you don't even get a guy to come up. So that puts Michigan in there. And again, another spot where you can never have enough good players at cornerback, I guess, is the best way to put it. I think Michigan's cornerback room will be super interesting next season. Shamari Earls is a guy who could see the field early. I'm not writing off Jaden Sanders as a guy who could see the field early. The move for Zeke Berry over to corner was maybe the best single move that Michigan made this year. He looks like a completely different player out there. JoJo Edmond, saw some snaps late and is a guy, obviously, I mean, he ended up as one of the most highly ranked guys there. So a lot of possibility. That's a room that looks very healthy right now, but adding another veteran piece like Karnley, who again would be a total plug and play, allows you to do more with some other guys. Maybe play someone at nickel that you would otherwise have played on the outside. It just adds a whole level of flexibility, but also just adding a really talented player to your roster.
Yeah, man. And he's also 3 years of eligibility left. You're talking about a guy who, the window to get him in, and this is what from a, how when is he attainable? when you're comparing him to Zachariah Davis, this is what maybe tips the scales in favor of Emmanuel Karnley. I talked about Zachariah Davis last week. Zachariah Davis is on Michigan's board, but it complicating matters in his recruitment is the fact that he's a third-year player. And so, you run into the credit transfer issue that you can't get credits over 60 transferred to Michigan. And so it doesn't make it impossible, but it does make it more difficult. And so, we have to wait to see how viable that recruitment is. Michigan, there is contact. They are looking at Zachariah Davis. There were some. I mentioned last week that there were Michigan players that there were rumblings that Zachariah Davis was going to jump in the portal last year, and there were Michigan players that were ready to pounce. Like, players were like, you'd be amazed. Like, coaches can't be talking to players who are on other rosters before they jump in the portal, but there's no restriction on players talking to other players. And players do it all the time. Like, oh, you about to jump in the man? Players are looking at Zachariah Davis like, hey, what are you about to do? He didn't jump in the portal, though. He stayed at Arizona. Well, now he's in the portal, and it's just a year, not too late, but it's now much more difficult. Whereas Karnley, it's like, this is prime time for Emmanuel Karnley and Michigan. He is a major, major, major priority. And he can come in here and he can compete. He would absolutely be a guy who plays. He would play right away. He would contend for a starting role at Michigan. I wouldn't say, far be it for me to say he would start, because you got guys here, but he would be in contention for sure. Size, speed, experience, he'd be in the mix. That would fortify your corner room for sure, Steve. So big time visit Emmanuel Karnley. Big time competition for Emmanuel Karnley too, though. So major one for the Wolverines, which leads us to another one. And this one was breaking news for us, reported first to you last week on the last episode. I think it was at the very end of the episode. It was actually at the very end of the episode. It said, be on the lookout for this guy if he enters the portal for Michigan to be on him. Troy Bowles, Georgia linebacker, this is a guy, like, he's a 4-star, but this isn't your regular 4-star that's buried on the depth chart. Why is he in the portal? He's behind like a maybe a 5th-year senior, or a 3-year starter senior at linebacker at Georgia, and 2 5-stars, one of whom was committed to Michigan, right? So 2 5-stars. Well, one of those 5-stars he's an OR with. So a 5-star freshman who Troy Bowles is an OR with, and then another 5-star and a 3-year starter who's a senior. Like, man, that's just and that team's in a playoff. Steve, that's different than some 4-star who's on a 4-loss team and you're buried on a depth chart. That guy's running from something. This guy's just buried on a loaded defensive roster at the University of Georgia, where Troy Bowles visited Michigan. Great relationship with Brian Jean-Marie, who recruited him at Tennessee. There is a great opportunity for playing time here because Michigan, and reported this, they are expecting for Jayshon Barham to stay and to move to edge, which would open that position. And so now you have a linebacker spot open next to Ernest Hausman, who they're expecting to stay. Yeah, you got NIL that you got, so you got that spot. So now you would have Troy Bowles, 6'2", 225, and true freshman Nate Owusu-Boateng. That would be a great mix in there competing at that spot. This would be a guy who with experience, who can run, who can cover, son of a coach. He's the son of Todd Bowles, coach of Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This is a huge portal priority. Visited Florida State, visited Houston. I think Oklahoma State is in the mix. This is a big time priority for Michigan. And I think the Wolverines are feeling really good about where they stand with him.
So the last 5 cycles, Georgia has signed the number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 1 linebacker in the country.
Good grief.
The last 5 cycles. The guy who was ranked number 3 is Jalen Walker, who just won the Butkus Award for top defensive player in the country, right? I mean, you talk about schools like Ohio State always get credit for receiver recruiting, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if there's any school in the country that has recruited a position better than Georgia recruits linebacker. I mean, it is insane the amount of talent that they accumulate there. So to your point, Sam, about this is a totally different type of transfer where it's like, I mean, they just signed the number 1 linebacker in the country this cycle, and the number 1 last cycle is a freshman on the roster right now, Raylan Wilson, as you mentioned, a sophomore who was ranked number 2, but I think Michigan would have said he was the number 1 linebacker in that class. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a situation where it's like, you can't really be too upset about wanting to find a different place to play, really, just because of the amount of talent Georgia seems to stack up there. And yeah, it's linebackers coming together pretty nicely with Barham moving up. It definitely means, I think, that there's definitely a need to take a guy for more competition in that room. Will be a lot of pressure on Jimmy Rolder next year, I think, to kind of be that second guy. But Bowles, we'll see how Owusu-Boateng does as a true freshman. I mean, he's already enrolled, right? So he'll have that extra time. But again, linebacker, another spot where Michigan could definitely use a vet to really just kind of solidify that room and give them another potentially talented option.
Folks, for those of you who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. That's what we call a marathon portal episode. The marathon portal episode. That's what we just gave you. So I expect positive comments in the Twitter. I mean, not in the Twitter, but positive comments in the comment section for everyone except for the folks who are On 3 fans. The On 3 fans give us negative comments, but everybody else is going to give us positive comments, right? So, hey, man, that's a marathon episode. I don't know that we've had an episode other than the signing day episode, an hour and 40 minutes, and Bryce isn't even on the episode, Steve.
Yeah.
Man.
No, yeah, Merry freaking Christmas, everybody.
Right. Come on, man. I mean, we covered every damn position.
Yep.
Every damn position. So
the write-up's going to go up. The first question or the first comment's going to be, you didn't talk enough about receiver. What's going on at receiver? I could see it right now. I already envisioned it. So,
people, we hope you enjoyed it. Of course, we give you the blow-by-blow on the MichiganInsider.com. You want to keep up every day, every minute, breaking news, hot news, accurate news. We pride ourselves on accuracy, on responsibility, on reliability. That's what our reputation is staked on, right? Anyone who's been with us for any period of time know that, listen, we won't take advantage of you. So come over there, give us a shot, 50% off. What are they calling it? The transfer portal loser is the, I think, transfer portal palooza. Sorry.
Transfer portal palooza.
Yeah, is what they're calling the 50% off deal over at 24/7 sports. So take advantage of that while you can. It gets you in the door an annual subscription. Some of you missed the 75% off deal. This one is still really, really good. Don't miss out on this one. It is outstanding way to get in on all of the great breaking news, keep you up to speed, and it'll get you through not only bowl practice, all the inside intel there, into the winter, into spring ball, the spring portal window, all of that, into the season. You'll be up to speed every step of the way. And for you full-time members and who say, why are you giving these people this great deal? Let me remind you, you full paying members, you get Paramount Plus. They don't. So if you get in on the promo, you don't get Paramount Plus until you become a full paying member. That is a perk only for full paying subscribers. And Paramount Plus is outstanding. Steve, have you started checking out Landman yet?
Yeah, so I'm not even like a huge shows. I don't think I have the attention span for even shows at this point. But Landman is one that I have been watching. It's been really good so far. One of Taylor Sheridan's 321 shows that he's currently producing. But I really liked it so far. I've always liked Billy Bob Thornton. Yeah. I think he does a really good job. I like that part of the country, like the Texas Panhandle, like the setting of it is really cool. And that, and like I mentioned before, I really like the Matlock reboot.
It is good.
I grew up watching the original Matlock, like with my grandma and my mom and my uncle and stuff. And, a reboot is always kind of risky. But this, if you haven't watched it yet, an amazing twist in the first episode, kind of sets the tone for the rest of the season. Kathy Bates is is amazing. Like, she's always really good. But yeah, I mean, that's the one thing I've been impressed with Paramount Plus. There are many more, like there's a lot more selection than I even really realized, both shows and movies too. I mean, there's a good amount of like really good movies on there as well. So, I mean, if you're a member of the site, you like what we're doing, you get this on top of it for free if you're a full paying member. I mean, I don't know what you would get if you subscribe somewhere else. You're probably not getting anything. So, I Landman, Matlock, probably going to do. I know you've mentioned Lioness.
Oh, it's outstanding.
Sam.
Lioness is unbelievable.
I got to get through Sheridan's other ones, 1748, 1821, 1824, 1901.
1923. So 1923 is the I couldn't watch. I think the other one is 1880s.
Yeah, it is. It's like 18, something like
18 something. I didn't watch that one, but 1923 is the one with Harrison Ford and Helen Mirren. And that is really good. And that the season 2 of that starts in February.
Okay, yeah.
So really looking forward to that. That's the prequel to Yellowstone for those who are.
Yeah, I did know that. Yeah, and then the other one's a prequel to the prequel. Yeah. So,
prequel. Right. So, really, really good. But Lioness is unbelievable. 2 seasons of that on Paramount Plus. You have the Jeremy Renner series, which is called Mayor of Kingstown, which is set in the fictional town of Kingstown, Michigan.
Yep.
So, prison town of Kingstown, Michigan.
Yeah.
So check that one out. That one's really good too. So there's some great shows. Some of these apps or whatever you call them, network, like what am I getting? Paramount Plus is outstanding. It is outstanding. And you get it when you subscribe. You're a full paying subscriber to the Michigan Insider and 24/7 Sports. So that's your perk as a full paying member. You do not get that as the promo member, 50% off. So
and you can't promo jump either. Like you can't cancel and then sign up for a promo and still get Paramount Plus if you were a full paying member. Like it doesn't work that way. So in case anyone's listening, because that's happened quite a bit in the last month or so. So the portfolio for Paramount Plus was probably bigger surprise to me than anything. Like at the end of the day, it's a really good addition.
It very much is. So, folks, appreciate all of those of you who have been with us for so long. Appreciate the love and support for sticking around. Tell your friends about us, and tell so we can continue to grow. And for those of you who are going to give us a shot, thanks a lot, and thanks for hanging out. We'll see you next time on the next edition of the Michigan Recruiting Insider.